once you do something like kill a president, your name is kind of marked down in the history book.
Oh, that's very poignant in this time. I think, well, what do you think? You think that that's a good idea? It's never a good idea. You know, political assassination, that ain't a good idea.
Things could have worked out differently for all of them, I think. I don't think any of them are, you know, demonic or evil, for want of a better word.
My name's Killian Jacob and I'm playing the young Shulgosh in Assassins. And the way he thought would be best to show the country, show the states that that poor men should have rights was by killing William McKinley.
In the USA, you can have your say, you can set your goals and seize the day. You're given the freedom to work your way to the head of the line. To the head of the line.
Well, the young Shulgosh was a factory worker at the end of the 19th century, and he worked in a bottle factory, and he heard this speaker, who was Emma Goldman, was talking about kind of the rights of the workers and the fact that there weren't any, and it kind of clicked a switch for him, and he knew that something had to be done.
And this is your idea?
Not mine alone, but mine.
So I find I can empathise with his motives. Not what he did, but they really had no rights, you know, and they were just in there working in terrible conditions, while, you know, people like, you know, the president and all the higher up people had loads of money and were just kind of flaunted it, and so you can kind of see where he's coming from, which I think makes it a bit easier maybe to play him, because it's not like some of the other characters where they're a bit more unhinged. He's only unhinged in what he does, not in his motives.
Opportunity for who? For him? For you? This is only opportunity for me. This! Only this!
He's very passionate about what he believes in, about the rights, you know, the poor man's pain, and he knows about the conditions. He's really involved in. He's not just doing it on a whim at all. It's very premeditated. And I kind of his integrity. He actually has a lot of integrity in my eyes from what I've seen of him. He really believes what he believes in, and he's coming from a genuine place, you know. And it's hard to say, was he led astray by Emma Goldman, or did she point him in the direction he would have found? It's hard to say.
A gun kills many men before it's done. Hundreds long before you shoot the gun. Men in the mines and in the steel mills, men in machines who died for what something to buy, or what to shoe or gun, the things to make the boxes richer, but the gun fails many men before it's done. Just one more.
My name is Paula Weldon and I'm playing Lynette Squeaky Frog. She wanted to assassinate President Jerry Ford because she was in love with Charles Manson, and he felt very strongly about the environment and all that jazz, and thought that that Jerry Ford kind of contributed to bad things in the environment, so she decided to stand up for what she believed in and did it for that reason.
For your love, let me prove worthy of your love, set you free.
I feel sorry for the character now that I've actually delved deeper into it, because she was this poor little girl who was on a beach and she had a fight with her dad and he threw her out, and the next thing Charles Manson came along and just sucked her in, and she got completely and utterly brainwashed by him, and she fell in love with him, and she'd do anything for him, including killing a president and going to jail for life. But she didn't succeed, unfortunately.
Who's Charlie?
Charlie Manson?
Charlie Manson? The mass murderer?
Is he a friend of yours? I'm his lover and he's slave.
The most difficult part is trying to get into that mindset of trying to just see where this character is coming from and why they decided killing someone was the best way forward. And it's interesting to delve deep into those kind of thoughts, because I think a lot of people can relate to it today more so than they would have been able to back then, because of everything that's happening nowadays with America and their president. She just got totally lost, and the only person she could cling on to just happened to be a psychopathic killer that turned her the wrong way. I would kind of understand her outlook on some aspects of her life, like, you know, in regards to she hates authority, and not authority, but she hates kind of all the commercialism and all of like money and all this big money and all that jazz about the world, and I kind of stand on the same kind of wavelength as her there. But other than that,
I felt like I was disappearing, like the whole world had divided itself into two parts, me and everybody else. And then this guy came down the beach, this dirty-looking little elf, and he stopped in front of me and he smiled his twinkly devil smile, and he said, "Your daddy kicked you out." He knew! Your daddy kicked you out? I mean, how could he know? My daddy didn't tell him, so who could have? God.
My name is Dennis Murphy and I'm playing Sam Bick.
What makes the world go round, right? Well, not exactly. I mean, bullshit makes the world go round. And you know that all too well. A worldly guy such as yourself. You know the world's a stinking, vicious pit of emptiness and pain.
Sam Bick, he's a strange character. Kind of an everyman. There was nothing special about Sam Bick. He was a manic depressive. He, at one point, was married. He lost his job. He lost his marriage. He got divorced at a young age. His parents split up. All this affected him in a big way, so much so that he had a nervous breakdown. He ended up going into an institution for a short period of time where he checked himself out. That's when he started believing in conspiracy, that the government were actively keeping poor people down for their own benefit. So he started protesting. This wasn't getting him anywhere. He had no wind behind it. It was just him out protesting it. He descended further and further into manic depression and crazy theories and all that. And we eventually came up with the idea that the only way he could solve this was by hijacking a plane and crashing it into the White House.
I'm going to drop a 747 on the White House and incinerate Dick Nixon.
He had planned it so that, as far as he knew, President Nixon would be in the White House at this particular time. So he proceeded to go to the airport. He got to the plane, he got into the cockpit, he killed the pilots, killed several other people before eventually getting shot himself before it was taken off, before he got anywhere with it. And his final words were reportedly, "Help me," which I suppose kind of tells you a lot about his character. He was, don't get me wrong, he was a murderer, he killed people, and his plan was not good, but he had a lot of issues.
I mean, maybe you could have picked up the phone. Just picked up the phone, said, "Hey Sammy, how you doing? Hang in there, Sam. Hey, this bud's for you! How long would that have taken you, huh?
I didn't look at how other people were playing Sam Big. I just read the script and I wanted to get across that, maybe that little bit of sympathy for him. It's hard to feel sympathy for somebody who does what he did, but I wanted to try and convey that, you know, make you feel a little bit for this guy. He wasn't just a cold-blooded killer. There was more to him. So I suppose, from my aspect, trying to get him that three-dimensional feel, give him a bit more depth and kind of make you feel a little bit something for you, where you know what he did was horrible and unjustifiable, but you could almost identify with it a little bit. You could almost see yourself, if it wasn't for a few things, going down a road very similar to that, and maybe garner a little bit of sympathy for him at the same time. That's tough to try and get in with some of the rants that he goes on. He's an open book. He rants and he rambles. He doesn't have a filter. It just spews out of his mouth. But I suppose it's getting the nuances of it out, where it's not just an incoherent mess. There's some meaning behind everything he says, and trying to get people to pick it out, to listen, and to say, oh, that's okay, well, that explains a bit more about him. That's why he is that way, and make up your own mind on him, I suppose. He's relatable. I found the best thing is that, he's you, he's me. He just has made some crappy choices, and he has a couple of crappy flaws. We all have flaws, it just happened that they all mixed together in him and led to this route that he took. I find him relatable. In real life, I suppose, like all the assassins, he genuinely believed that this would fix things. You can almost look at it that while he was an egomaniac, he was trying to do something for other people. He knew he was going to die. That was the intention from the start. He wasn't an assassin who was like Oswald, whose plan was to kill and get away. His plan was he was going to die as well. And I suppose he wanted the other people who were in his situation to be noticed, rather than him, because he was done.
Who do we believe? Who do we trust? What do we do? We do the only thing we can do. We kill the president. I am going to the Lordy. I am so glad. I am going to the Lordy. I am so glad. I am going to the Lordy. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. I am going to the Lordy.
My name is Andrew Holden, and I'm playing Charles Guiteau.
Christians and learn from a sinner. Charlie Guiteau, bound and determined, he'd wind up a winner. Charlie had dreams that he wouldn't let go. Said nothing to it, I want it, I'll do it. I'm Charles J. Guiteau.
He has a very specific kind of desire and motivation for doing what he does as well. And, to him that's really serious. We might look at it and just kind of label him as a loon or a crazy guy or whatever, but, it means something to him.
And he said, look on the right side, look on the right side, sit on the right side of the board. This is the land of opportunity. Is the lightning you restore. Boy, till you see tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll get your reward. You can be sad or you can be president. Look on the right side.
I remember as a student in drama school literally having a list of all the parts I would like to play. And you know, in Sweeney Todd it might be, okay, Toby, and I could play that for this year. And then Anthony, I could be a little bit older and I could play him. And then maybe you could play, you know, Pirelli or whoever, and you kind of work through it. And they don't pop up that often. And now, you know, I kind of go, well, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. Not in a depressing kind of way, but I suppose the point is they don't come around very often, so you kind of grab the chance when you get the chance, you know, particularly for Sondheims, for me anyway. You know, just to be positive for a second, he is actually one that I had on that little list that I kind of thought, oh, maybe when I'm an old fella. But I think I'm actually about his age. Like, the funny thing about all these guys is you look at them and people just looked so old back then. But he's pretty much around 40, and I'm not a million miles off that now, so I don't feel, from an age perspective anyway, that it's too far off the mark. He's gas because he's kind of a little bit of the light relief, but I suppose the kind of trap to fall into is not just to make him one note wacka comedy.
Don't be ridiculous. Why, look at me. I've been an attorney, an evangelist. I've sold insurance. I'm a celebrated author. Last week I was a bill collector. And next week, I'm going to be ambassador to France.
I think, you know, whichever of the assassins you're playing, you really got to keep track of it, that this is really important to them.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps kind of stopping them become, you know, OTT or cartoony or slight. You want them to try and feel like people. And what I find kind of really exciting about this show when it works is when you could be watching someone, you know, saying or doing something really kind of reprehensible, but you might have maybe a little bit of sympathy or empathy, or even with one or two of them, a little bit of understanding why they do it. And I think it's that kind of conflicted feeling when you're watching it that kind of hooks you into it, for me.
First of all, wait for God. Everybody pays attention when you think what must be done. Keep the moment in control. Remove a scoundrel. Unite a party. Preserve the union. Promote the sales of my book.
Musically, it's quite tricky. Some of the pitching stuff has been tricky in the middle of the song. Don't entirely feel 100% happy with that, but I think I've been on it more often than not.
To talk a little finger, no time to
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be any way doing this until we all learn the notes, Yoda.
Yeah, agreed. As soon as you're gone, you're gone, right? There's no
way.
Coming back is right.
It took a little finger, no time to change the world.
I suppose trying to kind of strike that balance between the fact that he is one of the characters that brings some humour, but not turning him into a big cartoon, and also kind of keeping that little bit of darkness and that other side to him as well, you know, because he's not just all one thing, you know, and none of them are.
I have unified my party. I have saved my country. I shall be remembered. I am going to the Lord's. Hey pal, feeling blue, don't know what to do. Hey pal, I mean you, yeah. Come here and kill a president.
Well, my name is Jerry Kane, and in Assassins I'm playing the role of the proprietor. I'm also playing two other smaller roles, or maybe even three smaller roles, of two of the presidents, and proprietor has some other things to do within the show as well.
Come on and shoot a president.
Yeah, well, I suppose like the character of the proprietor who opens the show, and that in itself is done. I've opened shows before, and but never musically. So it's quite a challenge to be the first person on stage. But to be perfectly honest with you, there was nothing else I wanted to do in this show, because I think that to me is the pivotal thing. The proprietor basically opens up the show by trying to give basically the ammunition and the guns to the assassins. So that's his basic role at the start, to convince these people who I suppose we know a little bit about through their history. So these historical characters, we are basically saying, you know, here's a gun. Do you want to do this? And that in itself it's very black. It's very, very dark. But that's what I love about it. It's so the proprietor is kind of like he's the baddie, even though he only appears very infrequently. But he is the baddie in the piece, in a sense, comparing to the balladeer, who is the voice of reason. The proprietor is the opposite of that. He's the voice of unreason, maybe.
Oh, what's a long boy, boss and teacher, buddy, in trouble with your money. This'll bring you separately. Here, give me some hay, little yeah. You give me prize, anything you want. I want prize. You give me prize. Only $8 cheap for anything you want.
I think it's singing notes in tune and in the right order. That would be the biggest. That's the biggest challenge: is right notes, right order, almost the right tune. That would be good.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, like I can honestly say, like, I'm a singer. I sing songs, sing my own songs. I do things like that. But from a musical point of view, and I've taken roles in musicals before where I've had to do solo singing. But this is a real challenge and a real buzz, because I'm not being smart. I'm working with people here who are just superb. I've worked with a lot of the guys here before. The very first musical I ever did in Waterford was with Ray Collins. So, and a few of the other guys, Sonia, I see, when we did Annie way back in 2003, 2004, or something like that. And again, so that was my first foray into Waterford theatre after a very long hiatus of not doing anything.
I want to be ambassador to France.
I'm sorry.
The challenge is actually you have to own the show. You have to sell that show to people at the very start, and it's important that they understand the story. And the only way they'll understand the story if my diction is correct, and they can understand, well, this is what this is about. And the other thing is there's certainly one line in that I hope gives people permission to laugh, because, as I said, even though the subject matter is very dark, this is a very funny play, and poignant and sad at times, but ultimately it's a very funny black piece of humour.
Oh, hey, need some help?
No, thanks.
My
That's
pleasure.
okay.
My pleasure. Hey, see, you want to be careful with these things. They're bullets. Nice doggy.
I think that's all of them.
Hang on a minute. What's that behind your ear?
Oh, thanks, Mr.
Ford. Jerry Ford.
President Jerry Ford.
Yeah. See you, ladies.
Someone tell the story, someone sing the song. Every now and then the country goes a little wrong. Every now and then a madman's bound to come along.
My name is Brian Toohey, and I am playing the balladeer.
The story's pretty strong. Doesn't change the song.
He's the narrator of the piece in the style of a folk singer. The only time you ever see the balladeer is on stage is when he's singing a song about one of the assassins telling you their story.
Everybody called it Wes. Why did you do it, Johnny? Nobody agrees. You who had everything, what made you break a nation to its knees? Some say it was her voice had gone.
represents what the American dream is, what the American dream should be, could be, what people expect it to be. It's not so much a question of who is the balladeer. It's more who and or what is the balladeer. The question of what is the balladeer is nearly more important, because he represents a lot in the piece. I mean, he's the antithesis to what the proprietor would be. So, like, kind of like a angel and devil on the shoulders type thing. The balladeer would be the angel of those two.
Yes, I have. Been a monster. Yes, I have. Been a killer. Yes, I have. Been an angel. Yes, I could. Wait until tomorrow.
He's not a character. I mean, yes, literally he's a character in the show, but he is not a character. He's an ideal, he's a representation of a belief. He is your average Joe. He is you, the audience. He is witnessing this alongside you. He is witnessing this alongside the audience. And that's kind of something really special, is that at the end, when the assassins kind of overpower the balladeer and get rid of him, that it's that kind of feeling that the audience then are nearly on their own now, that there's no protection. Like the balladeer I always kind of personally saw as like this, the connection between the audience and the show, and that he was there, always there in between, kind of a barrier, nearly a protector of the audience. And then once the assassins get rid of him, well then that's, you know, there's nothing there between the assassins and the audience.
Where's my prize? What's my prize? Promises a lie. Spread the word. Gotta spread the word. Right, all you have to do.
Songs are difficult. The timing for the Ballad of Booth is infuriatingly difficult, and I'd say I get frustrated attempting to sing it, but I'd say Wayne is getting more frustrated at me over it than I am with myself. But that's not easy, and it's not so much reaching the notes, it's finding the notes, the pitching of them, and the timing. Like the Ballad of Booth time signature changes, I think, in nearly every 3-4 bars, which is just insane. He's a representation of hope, the American dream, and the America people want. But then in the show we see the America that exists.
People listen, they may not want to hear it, but they listen. Once they think it's wrong, it's not again. Though they may not understand all the words, all the same they hear the music, they hear the scream, they hear the songs, they hear the drums. Forgotten about the country.
I am Adam Phelan and I'm playing John Hinckley in this production of Assassins.
Jody, tell me, Jody, how I can earn your love. I would swim oceans, I would move mountains, I would do anything for you.
Guy who tried to kill Ronald Reagan because he genuinely figured that it was going to make Jodie Foster realise her undying love for him.
Jody, Jody, let me prove worthy of your love. Tell me how I can earn your love, set me free. How do I turn your love to me?
John Hinckley Jr. Misunderstood, I'm sure is what I have been told to say many times. Like the poor guy, he, I've read a bit about him obviously to kind of get in the headspace for this, and he had a few siblings, a couple of older ones, I think maybe one or two younger ones, a rich father, pretty wealthy background, a very average young man in many ways, who clearly was just not quite all there. I'm pretty sure he saw a taxi driver and was just like, oh my god, who is this amazing young woman in Jodie Foster? And I'm pretty sure that from watching the movie, that was the only thing he'd seen of her, and that was how he got obsessed with her.
My dearest Jody, I am humiliated by my weakness and my impotence. Jody, I can change.
With John Hinckley, because he's certainly not one of the main parts of it, and he's certainly not one of the more dominant parts. He's never one of the people in control of what's going on. You know, Booth is obviously the guy who keeps us all in line, and then you got guys like Guiteau who have big personalities. Hinckley has no interest in that. That's what I find so fascinating about him. Every other assassin, nearly at any point of the play, is either talking about how horrible their lives are and how unhappy they are. Hinckley doesn't even care that they're there. John Hinckley, if he was just on a room, if he was in a room on his own for 2 hours, he'd be happy. If John Hinckley had his way, there would be no other characters in this play. It would just be him trying to figure out how to get Jodie's attention. And that's what I find so nice about John Hinckley, for want of a better word. There's this innocence about him. There's a genuine innocence behind him. I mean, everybody does what they like to do because they know it's the right thing. We don't shoot people because we know it's the wrong thing. John Hinckley, from what I've read about him and from what this play seems to say about all of its characters, he's just a person who, for whatever reason, there's like a tiny little bit somewhere in his head that's like, no, the ends justify the means. You know, whereas we would come to a particular, like, we might get so desperate for something, we might be so upset that we haven't gotten it yet. And maybe if it's really, really big and really important, some of us might consider doing something really rash, even though we know it's wrong. With Hinckley and with these other characters, it's not that they know it's wrong and they do it anyway, it's that they feel like they've been pushed into this. John Hinckley, for whatever reason, felt that his soulmate hadn't paid any attention to him yet, and decided that this was the best way to do that. That's not right, that's not okay, but there's something really, really purely interesting about that.
Well, can you play Sympathy for the Devil?
No.
How about Helter Skelter?
Well, no.
Well, what can you play?
I write my own songs.
Yeah? Let me hear one.
Told you. I just play for myself.
Pretend I'm not here.
Would you leave me alone? Please?
Getting past that place where you think, God, this guy is crazy. Or, you know, this is just a really horrible, really weird person. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I mean, that's why this show, that's personally why I think this show is so challenging for actors, is because Even with something as dark and gruesome as Sweeney Todd, you always know why he's doing what it is that he's doing. You know that the only reason he's there is because he's been sent away to prison for years and years. He lost his family. His whole life was destroyed. It's not as easy with these characters. It's not easy to know that you're playing someone who literally tried to assassinate a president or whoever was in the general vicinity of a president and be like, oh yeah, but I really like this character. You know, I really get why he's doing this. I really agree with him.
He died so that our love could live.
Sorry, Nancy. Looks like I forgot to duck. I sure hope the surgeon's a Republican. Where did this kid learn to shoot? The Russian army? There you go again. There you go again.
I am Kieran Walsh, and I am playing Lee Harvey Oswald in Assassins.
I think it's done. Well, I shouldn't kill myself. What should I do? Go home? Beg her to take me back. Plead with her. Beat her up.
You tried all that. It don't work.
I know it don't work. So tell me what I should do.
You should kill the President of the United States.
I was looking him up, certainly before the show began. He was a very interesting individual. He had a very colourful life, so to speak, between the Marines being discharged, then heading over to Russia, and then his endeavours over there, and then coming back and winding up in Dallas. He was certainly, I suppose, troubled.
Responsibility to who? You?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I am responsible to me and no one else.
To see him kind of go, or be portrayed in the musical as being one who's completely given up to the point where he was just ready to kill himself, and then have that or that energy rather, or negativity directed outward as opposed to inward by the other assassins is a very interesting dynamic, I think, personally. Because, I mean, to have someone so on the edge of their rope that suicide is genuinely what they're not even considering but about to do, and then can not even talk them down but rather redirect it so that as opposed to making themselves the victim, they're then actually making someone else a victim. It's a really great scene, I think, just that one moment. And having that exchange, I think, has been certainly one of the best moments I've ever got to do on a stage.
And James O'Ray! Yeah! These rednecks always had three names: James O'Ray, Tom Witherspoon, Lee Harvey Oswald.
I kind of feel I have a lot on my shoulders at that point, because if it is building up to that moment and I don't come on with the right amount of of energy, really, or if I don't approach the kind of scene with the right amount of just concentration, it kind of might feel, if not to anyone else, then to me, it'll feel like it's kind of fallen a bit flat. So in that respect, I do want to make sure every night that I am coming on there in the place that I should be, because again, I don't want to let everybody else down, because it has been a phenomenal show up to that point, and it would be a real shame to kind of let it drop. But I mean, as long as I make sure I give it what I should be giving it, I can make sure, I can trust everybody else to do the same, and then once that happens and it all falls into place, I have nothing to worry about.
You want someone to love you, Lee? Right? Isn't that it? Lee?
Yes.
Forget it.
What?
It ain't never gonna happen. It's a fantasy. You've got to give it up.
I'm going to kill myself. Don't you think I'm giving it up?
No, I think you're going to kill yourself, because that's how you think you're going to get it. When I'm dead, they'll be sorry. When I'm dead, they'll know how much they love me.
You don't get many opportunities in life to play Lee Harvey Oswald. So just the notion that I could was like, yep, go for it, give it socks. If I don't get it, I don't get it, but I'm going to make sure I damn well try.
These are not assassins, they're not bounty hunters, they're not warriors, so this is a new experience for them. But probably earlier on, more so than now, when you feel like I'm not giving you anything to do and you're standing there. If I give you a gun now
you would probably stare at it and examine it for at least as long as you had to do it there. Do you know what I mean? This is new. This is a new experience, it's a new sensation, and it's bloody gone, you know?